is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021, and this is episode 12 of Join the Discourse. My name is Jaden Duenas, and the premise of this show is, again, to join the discourse. The discourse is sort of a scholarly discussion of sorts, and you usually need more than one person for that, and so that's where you can come in. You can find me at jd-originals.com. You can join my Discord server there. You can send me a DM on any of my social media accounts. You can send me an email. Jaden at jd-originals.com, I'll be on the lookout for all of those. But today's topic, I kind of want to do something in honor of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Just as a this week thing. Obviously, MLK Day was yesterday, but just as a this week sort of theme thing. So I want to talk about reparations for slavery. So if you're unfamiliar with this reparations discussion, I suggest that you read The Case for Reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Thank you, Destiny, for all the hearts. I see you. I suggest that you read The Case for Reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Really great, succinct essay about reparations and this entire discussion, but also read my own essay, which I titled, it's a pretty long title, but Slavery as Capitalism and Socioeconomic Reform as Reparations for the Black Community, and that's by me. You can find that at jd-originals.com again, and I just wrote about how truly progressive anti-capitalist economic reforms could work as reparations, and hopefully bring us to a point in society where we're a more just and equitable place in society, basically. And so I was kind of inspired to talk about this week because I got a comment last week, I think it was on Thursday, from a channel on YouTube called 123456, just the numbers 1 through 6. I'm pretty sure I know who that is, actually. I'm gonna just keep it low-key anyway. So 123456 asked, can you do a discussion on reparations for slavery? I can't think of reasons to oppose reparations in principle, but I think we could see many obstacles when trying to implement it. I think this would be a good idea to start a discourse. And so 123456, yes, we will have that discussion. But I want to say one reason to oppose reparations, because they're saying that can't think of reasons to oppose it in principle. We have to recognize here that one reason to oppose reparations is seriously just out of sheer racism. We know that there's plenty of that to discount or to go around, and so we shouldn't discount that. Racism, it is one of those obstacles when trying to implement it, because it's, even when it's not outright racism and outright and direct racism, it's usually disguised one way or another. So we should recognize that is one of these obstacles in implementation. But I also want to connect it to a recent discussion of mine that I had last Saturday for episode 11 of Join the Discourse. And I had someone commenting back and forth with me for a sec. Nate is back again, was commenting, and Nate was very concerned with the way that progressive policies have turned out in California. And they said that basically those sorts of policies, economic reform, anti-capitalist reform, that is going to destroy the U.S. and the U.S. economy. And so that's a common point of neoliberal, neoclassical opponents to economic reform, to reparations, and other forms of government spending, just any government spending in general. But funny enough, they're not opposed to tax cuts for the wealthy. They say that that's how an economy works. That's basic economics. They call it trickle down economics and everything. But they are opposed to helping, working class people who actually do need help. And so I think that point is very ignorant of our lived empirical reality. We've seen that, just one example, we've seen that increased minimum wages do not necessarily correlate to massive inflation that destroys economies. I mean, think about just the fact that how much inflation has already occurred in this country while the minimum wage has stayed the absolute same. And that inflation, one, occurs naturally, but two, it occurs because people just lift up their prices. And so why can't our minimum wages correlate and match the way that those profit margins are being driven up? If people are making more profit for themselves, why are we forcing other people to stay at the exact same minimum wage and not be able to keep up with that economy that's going up, that's increasing prices? And so the truth is that investing in people, it does create a strong economy. We see that in the economic strength of states and countries that invest in their people. We also see that those states and economies are not perfect. So I'm not here trying to say that these are a bunch of utopias. I can't even say a bunch because there's not many, but we can't sit here and say that that California or New York or some place that, spends more on their people, invests more on universal things, social things for their people. We can't sit here and say they're perfect. And it's also not true. It's also true, that not all of those states, like California, can be applied exactly to all other states, like rural states, like Texas, like California, can't be mapped onto Texas in terms of policy and political economic reform. But that doesn't mean that there's no way to do it. And so to assume that there's no way to implement economic reform is, again, ignorant. And so I think that that is one of the problems, the first problems that I see with implementing reparations and economic reform is ignorance. It's an epistemological problem. It's a problem with the way that we view things, a framework through which we view things. And they say that that framework is basic economics. They may try to make you feel dumb about it if you say otherwise. If you try to tell a person with neoliberal, neoclassical views what I'm telling you right now, they're going to tell you that you're wrong. They're going to tell you that you don't understand the economy, that it's basic economics. But let's start with this. There's no such thing as basic economics, because economies are not basic things. Economies are complex social structures. They are alive. They are constantly in flux. They are constantly reacting to stimuli on the individual level, as well as the societal level. They encapsulate real, live, conscious human beings. And neoclassical economics, they don't account for any of those things. They dumb down the economy to graphs and arrows. They say, if this goes up, then this goes down. And the world doesn't always work like that. And even when the world does work like that, we need to consider the human component of that. We need to consider the fact that real people are within those arrows, that real people's dollars are within those arrows. And the neoclassical view, the view that is anti-reparations, the view that is anti-capitalist economic reform, remains ignorant of that human component and ignorant of the historical component, ignorant of the procedures of history. How did we as a society come to be in this place? How did the society here that we have here, how did it come to be how we know it today? And that can't be explained away with graphs and arrows and basic math. Basic math can't justify the present historical harms done to the Black community. And so this ignorance, it's reflective of colorblindness, our colorblind society. And it tells us a few different things. It correlates with what Charles Mills, he writes about as being the inverted epistemology of white supremacy. So this like very backwards, illogical way of thinking that justifies white supremacists. It's the white supremacist rationale. And so this ignorance, it tells us a few things. It tells us, one, that race doesn't exist, that's colorblind, right? While simultaneously telling us, two, that every race is already equal by the law, but it also doesn't exist. So that's partially illogical right there. And then therefore, three, that no reform or reparations are needed for past and present injustices because of one and two, despite those injustices never being rectified in our history. And so that line of thinking is totally illogical, clearly. But that illogic, that inverted epistemology, that illogic, that rationale, it's just one of the obstacles in implementing progressive economic reform and reparations for slavery. And it's that epistemological obstacle. That kind of rhymes. That was nice, actually. But the only way around an obstacle like that, an obstacle in the framework, the cognitive frames through which we think, is to show and to teach people that, one, their neoclassical economics aren't basic. In fact, they're wrong. They're not accurate to our reality, the way that we live as people. And also, we need to show and teach people that investing in people works to build strong communities and strong economies. Notice that I said community before economy. And that's because the human component of our communities, the way that we come together as people, is much more important than dollars and cents. And we need to recognize that. And I feel that the typical neoclassical view that says that we can't do reparations, that we can't do economic reform for X, Y, and Z, it fails to consider those vital aspects of our lives. And so before I head out, this is just one obstacle, clearly. What other obstacles do you see? I feel like there are plenty of obstacles in the way of implementing reparations for slavery. Are you for or against reparations to slavery? That's another question I have for you. Are you for or against progressive economic reforms? And do you think those can go hand in hand, like I argue in the essay again? So you can find that at jd-originals.com if you're interested in learning more of that sort of view, the socioeconomic reform as reparations view. But also make sure you read the essay by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Really, really incredible essay. I read that a couple times now, but it never fails to bring me right back in. But also stay tuned for my show this Saturday morning because I'll be reading excerpts from my essay as well as screening my 2019 short film, Royal Red Bricks. And that'll just kind of wrap up this week's discussion on reparations and capitalism and economic reform. And this is during the discourse. So if you got something to add to this discussion or any other questions for me, you can join my conversation at my Discourse server at jd-originals.com. Again, you can send me a DM. You can email me at jaden@jd-originals.com. Remember, you can listen back on Spotify. You can listen on Apple Podcasts. You can listen on YouTube. You can play back on Periscope for the time being. And pretty soon you'll be able to play back on Twitter. But the last thing is just make sure you check out my YouTube channel. You'll be able to see past live streams I've done. You can see some of the art videos I've done. I'm going to stream a little photography session I did yesterday. I'm going to stream that tomorrow night. So make sure you check that out. But other than that, make sure you tune back in on Thursday for a new discussion. We'll be discussing Joe Biden's inauguration, which is tomorrow. I'm so glad that this Cheeto's finally out of here, but we can look forward to some things in the next 4 years, but we also got to talk about some things we need to be prepared for. And so I hope you'll join the discourse then, and thank you for watching.